How's it going, everybody? This is Freddy Krueger, and it's Halloween season. That means you might be looking for a costume. And if you are, my buddy Robert's gonna help you out, so stick around. And if you're going to a party, remember to stay safe. Otherwise, Freddy's gonna get ya.
Fellas, welcome back. It's Robert, your everyday gentleman, and I want to say a quick thank you to my buddy Freddy for dropping in to hook me up with that intro. Apparently it pays to grow up watching horror movies. But anyway, like Freddy said, it's Halloween season, and even though this year may look a little different due to some restrictions, you may still need a costume to celebrate at a small get-together or just to celebrate at home. So today, I'm going to share with you some ideas, but with a bit of a twist. Now, last year's video, which I'll link right here, was a list of some what I considered stylish costumes that I paired with some colognes. But this year my list of costumes is built around if you're a pipe or a cigar smoker. You don't necessarily have to be a smoker, but the costumes are based on characters or people that smoke. And since most people are going to be at home or at a small get-together at somebody else's house, it shouldn't be an issue to light up and puff at some point during the evening. But before I get into the list, if this is your first time here, I want to welcome you. If you're into not only tobacco, but also things like men's style, fragrances, grooming, fitness, whiskey, and other topics for the everyday man, then this might be the place for you. Consider subscribing and joining the growing EG family. And if you're already a member, I want to thank you for your continued support. And without further delay, let's talk about these costumes. Now, first up is probably one of the first characters you think of when you think of a pipe smoker. I'm talking about the famous sleuth himself, Sherlock Holmes. And I'm talking about the classic version, not the newer RDJ version. Now for this costume, you're gonna need your basic detective setup, the hat, the coat, magnifying glass, and of course, the pipe. Now the pipe that you usually see him with, he does have different ones, but the one that you usually see him with is one that's known as a calabash. Now I unfortunately don't have one of those, but I still think you can get away with something like this, which is a full bent. This is one from Seven Alley. Something like this kind of goes with the style of Sherlock Holmes and what you usually see him smoking with. I think it's a pretty easy costume to put together, but you do this and you'll be ready to solve any mystery that comes your way.
But how do you know about them?
Elementary, my dear Watson.
Now this next one might appeal to the older crowd or someone that's into vintage TV. Although truth be told, Groucho Marx's distinct features are probably well known, even though his name may not be. Now for this costume, all you really need to do is get yourself some slacks, a button down, maybe some suspenders or a sport coat. But the biggest part of this costume is going to be those bushy eyebrows, that mustache, glasses, and of course, that cigar. And I would recommend going with something like a Corona or a Toro. Now you couple that with some sharper marks throughout the night and you'll be ready to go.
Hey. Yes, sir? Oh, no, sir. This is special for Mr. Helton, sir. You see this? Come back in a half hour and I'll give you another look at it.
This next one is one that is carrying over from last year's list, but it's one that's always going to be a classic. Now, pirates, mainly captains, can be seen enjoying a nice puff of tobacco from a pipe on occasion. And the costume itself can be essentially any pirate captain out there. Captain Barbossa, Captain Sparrow, Captain Morgan. I like the look of a pirate captain much more, especially compared to that of the crew, because to me it's just much more refined, especially with that hat and the coat that they wear. And the pipe itself can be anything from your basic bent pipe to something more elaborate like this meerschaum sculpted pipe. I also really love the pipe that you see Davy Jones smoke in Pirates of the Caribbean.
You feel dead.
Any way you decide to go, puffing on a pipe is a perfect final touch to pull off the pirate captain. The leader of the well-known team of mercenaries is a great option if you enjoy smoking cigars. I'm talking about Hannibal from the A-Team. Now Hannibal is known for sparking up a cigar after a successful mission. And to me it's a pretty easy costume to put together. All you really need is some jeans, some boots, maybe a denim button down, The main part of this costume is going to be that khaki colored field jacket, and then you can also go with a tactical belt. And if you want to go a little extra, of course you can add some firearms, safely of course, but you can't forget that cigar. And I think something like a Robusto shape would work perfectly.
And I love it when a plan comes together.
Now this next one is one of the more prolific smokers in Hollywood, and you can often see his characters in movies smoking a cigar. I'm talking about the many characters of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now if you want to pull off a look that's a little more dapper, then you can go with Arnie from True Lies. Or if you're pretty jacked and you want to show off some of those gains, then you can go with his look from Commando or from Predator. And you've also got an option if you're a comic fan. Though Mr. Freeze may be one of his worst options, it's not a bad way to go if you want to chill and smoke a cigar.
Cool party.
Now, this next costume is another one that's a classic, and even though it may not be as common now, I think it's always one that you're going to see around. I'm talking about Logan or Wolverine, whatever you want to call him. Now, Logan or Wolverine can often be seen with a cigar in comics or in movies, but I personally would ditch that X-Men suit. Instead of that jumpsuit, I would opt for the more rugged look with the boots, denim, ribbed tank top, and then optional is that leather jacket. The main thing you don't want to forget is that hairstyle, those chops, and of course the blades. And last but not least, that final touch, make sure your Logan is chomping on a cigar. And honestly, I don't really think it matters what kind of cigar you go with. He just doesn't come across to me as somebody that's a picky smoker. And if anyone says anything about you smoking a cigar, you can just follow Logan's lead.
Excuse me, I'm Eric Lensher.
Charles Xavier.
Go f yourself.
Now another character that's a very well-known pipe smoker is the Sailor Man himself, Popeye. So much so that you never see him without his pipe, and you even get to see him use it sometimes when he gets pumped up off his spinach. Now this costume is probably the only one that's going to require some actual costume purchasing, mainly because you don't really see guys walking around with forearms as jacked as Popeye. Outside of that though, it's your typical sailor suit and hat, and the final touch, you can add that eye squint and that famous corncob pipe like this one. You might even want to work on his way of speaking, whether it's his low mumble,
This guy started on a shoestring and he's gonna end the same way.
or his growl. Maybe catch up on a bit of Joey from Full House to help.
Well, all right, now that I'm into it, okay.
But regardless of the voice part, Popeye is a great option and excuse to light up that pipe. Clint Eastwood is an icon when it comes to Westerns, and one of his more well-known characters is the Man with No Name. Now the cowboy I mentioned last year, but this look is completely different from the Tombstone look that I mentioned in that previous video. Instead, you're going to be going for a more dusty, rugged look. The main components of this look are going to be the boots, the poncho, and of course your cowboy hat. And you're probably going to want to add that gun belt and 6-shooter. Last but not least, make sure you have that cigar. Really, I think any kind of cigar is going to work. Pair that with the 10-mile stare, and you'll be ready for the Wild West.
I don't think it's nice, you laughing.
Now, the leader of one of the gangs of New York was a brutal man and a devout patriot. I'm talking about William Cutting. Now, William Cutting, otherwise known as Bill the Butcher, was always seen with a knife and sometimes with a pipe. Now, this costume is probably going to be pretty easy for the dandy type dresser, with lots of colors on the trouser, waistcoat, and jacket. And make sure you don't forget that top hat and butcher's knife on the waist. By the way, bonus points if you're able to get that facial hair and bald eagle for the eye. And the last item is the pipe. Bill can be seen smoking from a clay pipe like this one, perfect for accepting the challenge to a brawl like a gentleman.
Challenge. Challenge accepted.
Last but not least is a couple of options that are similar yet different. Both of them are crime bosses, both of them smoke cigars, but both have different looks. I'm talking about Tony Montana or Al Capone. Now, both of these leaders of organized crime are seen in suits, although I'd give the more dapper look to Capone, while Tony sports a more casual look that you see commonly in the 70s. And you can add a Tommy gun if you're going with Capone, or the little friend if you're going with Scarface.
You want to play rough? Okay. Say hello to my little friend.
Now, both of these, in my opinion, are going to require a nice stick to smoke on. And if you really want to step up the game, I would recommend going with something like a Davidoff Churchill. Just make sure you don't start any wars at that get-together. So that wraps up this year's list of costumes. Now, I hope you enjoy the twist I gave them this year by making these all tobacco smokers. And there's definitely more options you can go with, something like Einstein, Winston Churchill, Gandalf. And if you have any additional suggestions, make sure you put those in the comments down below. Now, as always, if you found value in this video, make sure you let me and YouTube know by hitting that like button. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and do all the things that help this channel continue to grow. And remember, being a gentleman is an everyday thing. Have a happy Halloween, fellas.
We bop and hippity hop. I'm as happy as I can.